Hey there, it's time for this week's market snapshot. What do sellers need to know and what's happened in the last 7 days here in the Northern Virginia real estate market? And spring is sprung, sellers, it's a fantastic time. Let's dive into this. All right, sellers, so the spring has sprung. We've been saying this for a couple weeks now, and we're seeing more and more evidence of it, as you're going to see when we go through the numbers here. What you need to see that is happening in the actual market that you need to be prepared for is that, yes, properties are going on the market. Yes, they are going very quickly, but these are properties that are priced correctly, and they're priced correctly for their condition. And if you do that, if you strategically price your property correctly, you will end up getting at market price or even above. And it's going to go within that first 7 days as long as your agent is doing the proper aggressive marketing. If they're just sticking a sign in the yard and waiting for buyers agents to bring buyers to the market, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen for you that easily. But if you're preparing the property, if you're doing the upgrades that are necessary to make it present well, even I'll give you an example. We had a property that the as-is market value on this property was about $270,000 to $300,000. Our buyer put in about our seller put in about $23,000 worth of repairs on this property. We went on the market at $350,000, and we ended up getting an offer within 3 days for $370,000. So he put in $20,000, and that gave him an extra $70,000 in equity, and it was all strategic. He didn't renovate bathrooms. He didn't do major system upgrades. He just did the things that need to be done so that the house is more turnkey and it appeals to the buyers. So as a seller, you have to have these strategic updates. And the good news is he didn't even have to pay for it. He's paying for it at settlement. So he didn't have to come up with the money up front. And we have contractors that can do that for you. So as a seller right now, it's a fantastic time to get in the market. It's a fantastic time to have your property on the market. The influx of spring inventory has not quite hit yet. So buyers are kind of fighting over the good properties that are out there right now, and that's the position that you want to be in. If you'd like us to come by and do a seller consultation for you, I'm going to give you the number after I go through the statistics here. But Kelly and I are happy to walk through, take a look at the property, give you ideas of what you could do to get your property prepared so that you're not wasting money on things that do not give you a return on investment. We can give you a rough idea about what your property could go to market for, what you could sell it for, and look at what a good marketing strategy and a good sales strategy for getting your property sold at top market value would look like. And then you can make sense if you can determine if it makes sense to you to work with us or to work with another agent. Even if you don't work with us, you're going to have a ton of information that's going to help you move forward successfully. So I'll give you the information at the end of this. Feel free to reach out to us. That consultation is absolutely free. All right, let's get into the numbers so I can show you exactly why I'm saying what I'm saying. So here we go. As always, our black line is our under contract numbers. These are the buyer activity or the demand. And then the teal line here is the inventory or the supply. So this is a supply versus demand graph. And remember, this is different. These are lead measures. These are not lag measures. We're not looking at sold data because sold data can be anywhere from 30 to 60, 75 days old. We're looking at data for the last 7 days so we can see real time what needs to happen. So you can see that buyer activity, number of contracts has increased again. And you can see that it's on a steady increase up since about the middle of January. We've started that spring has sprung. We're seeing the numbers going up. And we had this dip here, but this was the 2 weeks for the snow. And then on the inventory side for the sellers, we can see it's on a trend upward as well. It's not increasing as much as buyer activity. And so what happens with that is you can see that the inventory was kind of flat this last week. Buyer activity still increased, so that increased the gap here. So if we go down here to buyer's market versus seller's market, we have the normal market is right here, this gray line. Anything above this normal market indicates a seller's market, which means that the seller is in control. Anything below the buyer's market is the buyer is in control. When you're a seller, when you're up in this area up here, that means you are in the, if you are handling your property correctly, then this is where everything flows very, very smoothly. Buyers, this is also the opportunity for you to be strategic and flow right into that as well and make for a nice, easy transaction, but you've got to protect yourself as well, so make sure you do that. Okay, so we can see that we are on a steady trend upward in the the strength of the seller's market, and you can see that it's not doing what it did last year. We had a little bit of a spike in middle of February last year, and then we started trending downwards, but it looks like we're going to continue trending upwards. So I think that we're going to see this go into the spring with a strong seller's market. And so if you're interested in one of those consultations, please feel free to reach out to us at 703-783-2143. There's no charge for that. Kelly and I are happy to do it for you. If you end up working with us, that's fantastic. But even if you don't, at least you'll have good strategic information that you can use to navigate this market. All right, everybody have a Okay, and speaking of navigating this market, so now we have the contract trends. As you can see, this was for February 10th through February 16th, a total of 165 contracts. You can see when we go to the contract price that we had 71% of properties sold at or above market value, asking price, with 37% of that being above the actual sales price. 29% of the properties were lower than asking price. So if we go down here, and these are all Virginia, if we go down here, you'll see that 56% of properties sold within the first 7 days. 56%. Now again, just like last week, 56% sold in 7 days, but only 37% went above asking price. So not all properties are getting multiple offers. Not all properties are a bidding war. There are, about a little over half of those that sold quickly that are in that state. But if your agent is in communication with the selling agent, you may not have to go above asking price. So it's still an opportunity there, but the properties are going quickly. So you have to have your team in place and be able to move quickly. Sellers, you need to be aware that just because you get an offer the first week, in a seller's mind, a lot of times they think, okay, if I got an offer within 2 days on this, what's coming? And usually your first offer is your best offer. So sellers, make sure you're working with your agent on that aspect of it for realistic expectations. You can see about 15% of properties went between 8 and 21 days, and then anything over 22 days seems to have gone under asking price. So that 22-day mark is now it's starting to trickle in to where that window of importance for the seller is getting shorter and shorter before buyers will start trying to reduce the price because properties are moving so quickly. A few weeks ago, we were seeing that you would have a large percentage of properties that were sitting for more than 22 days, but they weren't all going for under asking price. So just keep that in mind as you're going through this, buyers and sellers. Financing versus cash, kind of irrelevant, but 84% were financed. Contingencies, so we had been seeing consistently that finance contingencies were 70 to 75, even as high as 80%. It's down to 67% on contracts. Appraisal contingencies have come down hugely, 59%, and this is important because when properties go over asking price, the question of is it going to appraise comes in. So one of the ways you strengthen your offer is having that appraisal contingency in there. One of the ways you strengthen your offer is as a buyer not having that appraisal contingency. So you can see that more and more buyers are starting to waive that appraisal contingency, which can be risky. So you have to make sure that you're secure enough to do that. Home inspections, this is the huge one. It's down to 58% of the contracts had them. A few weeks ago, we saw as high as 80% had them. So slowly but surely, we're starting to see those home inspections coming off of the contracts. So just be prepared for that, buyers and sellers. Be realistic on your side, because still there's 42% that are getting the inspection contingency. With regards to the contract length of time, about 48% are within 16 to 30 days. And again, for a buyer's perspective, you can actually strengthen your offer by closing more quickly, so your lender does matter in that regard. And then there were 7%, there were 10 to 15 days, and 2% were actually, where's that 2%? 60 days plus, okay. Sellers, 100% of these contracts had buyer agent compensation. Now, this does not mean that the entire buyer agent compensation was covered. So buyers, you need to be aware that you may have to cover a little bit of your own buyer agent commission, but sellers in 100% of these contracts did contribute at least a portion to the buyer agent compensation. And about 81% of that was over 2.5%. 13% was over 3%. So the sellers are paying buyers agents, and they're paying them well because they're receiving strong offers. So sellers, you need to be aware of that if you want to compete with the other properties on the market, you're likely going to need to be willing to pay some kind of buyer agent commission on the process. Okay, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us. The number is 703-783-2143, and we will see you guys on next week's Market Snapshot.